Welcome. You don't need to do anything right now. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to remember any of this. Just let your eyes close if they haven't already, and let your breathing settle into something easy and unhurried. Tonight, we're going to spend a quiet hour in the ancient world. Not the ancient world of battles or empires or great speeches carved into stone. Just the ordinary ancient world. The world of people finishing their work for the day, eating a simple meal, and going to sleep. Imagine, for a moment, that the sun is going down. Not here, not now, but a very long time ago. The light turns amber and then copper across rooftops of mud brick and limestone. Walls that have been warm all day begin to give that warmth back to the air. If you pressed your hand against one of those walls right now, you would feel the heat of the afternoon still held inside the clay, slowly releasing. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then stops. Somewhere, water moves in a shallow canal. Somewhere, a woman sets a clay bowl on a stone ledge and waits for it to cool. This is where we begin. In the fading warmth. In the ordinary quiet. Let your breathing slow, and we'll go there together. Chapter 1. The Scribe's Last Line. In a modest house near the eastern bank of the Nile, in the time of the New Kingdom, a scribe is finishing his work for the day. His name does not matter. He is not important. He is simply a man who copies documents, one of many who work in the local administrative quarter, and his task today has been the same as it was yesterday and will be again tomorrow. He is copying a grain inventory. The papyrus is spread before him on a low wooden desk, held flat at the edges by two smooth river stones. The sheet has a faintly golden color in the lamplight, and its surface is just slightly rough beneath his fingertips, like the skin of a dried fig. He writes in hieratic, the everyday cursive script that scribes use for records and letters, not the careful picture writing of temple walls. His reed pen is thin and well used, its tip split and softened from weeks of work. He dips the pen into his ink. The ink is a mixture of carbon soot and gum, ground together with a little water in a shallow palette. It is very black. He writes a column of numbers, slowly and without urgency. 14 measures of emmer wheat for the granary of the overseer. 6 measures of barley set aside for the temple brewery. The numbers do not excite him. They are simply numbers, and he writes them the way a person might fold laundry, methodically, with the hands knowing the work better than the mind. The room around him is small and made of mud brick. A single oil lamp sits on a ledge near the desk, its flame burning in a shallow dish of rendered fat. The flame is steady, barely moving. The wick is a twist of linen, and it gives off a faint smell, not unpleasant, just the warm, slightly sweet scent of animal fat burning slowly. The walls of the room are plastered smooth and painted with a thin wash of whitewash that has yellowed over the years. There are no decorations. Just the pale walls, the desk, the lamp, and the scribe. He finishes the last column. He lifts the reed pen from the papyrus and holds it for a moment, letting the last drop of ink settle back into the palette rather than fall onto the page. Then he dips the pen into a small jar of water to rinse the ink from the fibers. He wipes it gently on a scrap of linen. He stoppers the ink palette with a clay plug and sets it aside. He rolls the papyrus carefully, ties it with a strip of flax cord, and places it in a basket with the other scrolls he has finished this week. There is nothing else to do. The work is done. From the next room, he can hear his wife arranging the evening meal. The sound is small and familiar, the soft scrape of a bread loaf being moved from a stone surface, the dull sound of a ceramic jar being set down, the quiet glug of beer being poured into a cup. The bread was baked this morning. It has cooled all day on the ledge near the window, and by now it is dense and firm, with a crust that will crack when he tears it. The beer is thick and slightly sweet, brewed from emmer, the same grain he has been counting all afternoon. He stands slowly from his low stool, feeling the stiffness in his back from sitting since midday. He stretches, not dramatically, just a small lifting of his arms and a roll of his shoulders, the way anyone does after sitting for too long. He walks through the doorway into the front room, where his wife has set out the bread and the beer on a low table. They do not say much. They eat. The bread is good. The beer is good. Through the small window, the sky over the Nile is a deep, quiet blue, fading to darkness at the edges. The air smells of the river, of mud and green reeds, and the faintest trace of baking bread from a neighbor's house. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once, far away, and then stops. The flame in the lamp barely moves. The walls hold the day's warmth. The papyrus rests in its basket, the ink long dry. Nothing else happens. Chapter 2. Locking the Storehouse. In a town along one of the southern canals of Mesopotamia, in the time that scholars would later call the Old Babylonian period, a minor merchant is walking the short distance from his house to his storehouse. It is a walk of perhaps 30 steps across a narrow, unpaved lane. The ground is packed earth, still warm beneath his sandals from the day's heat. The sky above is a deep bronze, turning slowly to indigo in the east. He is not a wealthy man. He trades in sesame oil and a few other staples, dried fish, bundles of reeds for building, small quantities of wool. His storehouse is a single room of mud brick, no larger than a modest bedroom, with a heavy wooden door sealed with a clay bulla, a small lump of clay pressed over the latch and stamped with his personal seal. He checks the seal now, pressing his thumb gently against its surface to make sure it has not been broken or disturbed. It has not. It is exactly as he left it this morning. He does not open the door. There is no reason to open it. He simply wanted to check the seal, the way a person might check that a window is closed before going to bed. It is a small ritual, a habit, and it satisfies a small, quiet part of his mind that needs to know things are in order. Inside the storehouse, though he does not look, there are 7 jars of sesame oil arranged along the back wall. They are large jars, rounded at the base and narrow at the neck, sealed with clay stoppers and a layer of bitumen to keep them airtight. The oil inside is pale gold and very still. There are also 3 bundles of dried reeds tied with palm fiber rope, and a basket of dried fish wrapped in linen. Everything smells faintly of sesame and bitumen and the dry, earthy scent of mud brick. But he does not smell any of this tonight because the door is closed and sealed, and he is already walking back across the lane to his house. His house is small but comfortable. The walls are thick mud brick, plastered inside with a mixture of clay and straw that gives them a smooth, slightly uneven surface. The main room has a low hearth near the center, and this is where his wife is tending the evening meal. She is stirring a pot of barley stew. The stew has been cooking since late afternoon. The barley was soaked since morning, and it is slowly softened and thickened into a dense, porridge-like mixture, flavored with a handful of dried lentils, a few wild onions, and a little sesame oil from his own stock. The smell fills the room, warm, starchy, deeply plain. It is the kind of smell that has no drama to it. It is simply the smell of food that is almost ready. His wife stirs slowly, using a long wooden ladle worn smooth from years of use. The embers beneath the pot glow a deep, soft orange, and the heat rises in a gentle shimmer that makes the air above the hearth look slightly liquid. She does not look up when he comes in. She knows it is him by the sound of his step, the way the door frame creaks when he leans against it for a moment before entering. Their children are already asleep. 2 small shapes on reed mats along the far wall, curled beneath thin woolen blankets. One of them breathes with a faint whistling sound. The other is perfectly still, the way only sleeping children can be still, as though the world has simply stopped for them. The merchant sits down near the hearth. He removes his sandals and sets them by the door. His bare feet rest on the packed earth floor, which is cool now compared to the lane outside. His wife ladles the stew into 2 bowls. They are plain bowls, unglazed, the color of the earth they were made from. She hands him one, and they eat in the quiet company of the sleeping children and the dying embers. The stew is thick and warm and completely unremarkable. It tastes the way it always tastes. The barley is soft. The lentils have dissolved into the broth. The sesame oil leaves a faint richness on his lips. He eats slowly, not because he is savoring it, but because there is no reason to eat quickly. The day is done. The storehouse is sealed. The children are asleep. There is nowhere else to be. Outside, the last light has gone from the sky. The canal at the edge of town makes a soft, continuous sound, like a long, slow breath. Somewhere in the distance a dog barks, then falls quiet. The clay walls hold their warmth. The embers settle deeper into ash. The stew thickens slowly in the pot, and nothing else needs to happen tonight. Chapter 3. The potter's kiln cools. In a small town along the eastern coast of the Mediterranean, in the region that traders and travelers call the Levant, a potter stands in his courtyard and watches his kiln. He is not doing anything. He is simply standing there, the way people sometimes do, at the end of the day, letting the last minutes of work drain away without any particular thought. The kiln is a squat, rounded structure of mud brick, about waist high, with a narrow opening at the front and a small chimney hole at the top. This morning, it was hot enough to redden the air above it. Now the fire has been out for several hours, and the kiln is cooling slowly, the way a stone cools after a long day in the sun. If he held his hand near the opening, he would feel a dry, gentle warmth, like standing near a wall that has been baking all afternoon. But he does not hold his hand near it. He just stands and watches, and the heat leaves so slowly that he could not say, from one moment to the next, whether anything has changed at all. Inside the kiln, arranged on a shelf of flat stones, are 12 small bowls. They were shaped yesterday on his simple wheel, a flat stone disc that turns on a pivot, and they were left to dry overnight in the shade of the courtyard wall. This morning, he loaded them into the kiln and built a fire of dried brush and animal dung beneath them. Now they are fired, hardened, transformed from soft clay into something that will last for years, perhaps for centuries, though he does not think about that. He thinks about whether he has enough clay for tomorrow. He decides that he does, and the thought passes without consequence. His apprentice, a boy of perhaps 12 or 13, is sweeping the courtyard with a bundle of dried palm fronds tied to a stick. The boy sweeps slowly, pushing a thin scattering of ash and dust toward the corner near the gate. The broom makes a soft, scratching sound against the packed earth, like the sound of a cat's tongue on rough fabric. The boy is not thinking about the sweeping. His mind is elsewhere, in that comfortable, unfocused place that minds go when the body is doing something it has done 100 times before. The potter turns away from the kiln and walks to the shelf along the courtyard wall, where the finished pots from earlier firings are stacked. He picks up one of the bowls that cooled yesterday and turns it in his hands. It is a simple, undecorated bowl, the color of dry sand, smooth on the inside and slightly rough on the outside, where his fingers shaped it. It is a good bowl. It will hold soup or grain or oil. It will sit on a shelf in someone's kitchen and be used every day until it breaks, and then its pieces will end up in the midden heap outside the town wall, and that'll be the end of it. He sets it back on the shelf. The courtyard is darkening. The western sky still holds a thin band of amber light along the horizon, but the courtyard itself is in shadow now, the walls casting long, soft shapes across the ground. The first crickets have begun. Not many yet, just one or two. Their sound thin and tentative, like a question no one needs to answer. By full dark, there will be dozens, and their sound will become a single, continuous, silvery hum that fills the air the way water fills a bowl. But for now, it is just one or two, and the silence between their calls is wide and restful. The apprentice finishes sweeping and leans the broom against the wall. He looks at the potter, waiting for any final instruction. The potter shakes his head. There is nothing more to do. The boy nods and walks out through the gate, his sandals scuffing softly on the stone threshold. The potter stands alone in the courtyard for another moment. The kiln ticks faintly as its bricks contract in the cooling air. The crickets call. The sky deepens. He goes inside, where his wife has set out flatbread and a dish of pressed olive paste. The bread is still slightly warm. The house smells of bread and clay and the faint, dry dust of the kiln. The walls hold the day's warmth, and the crickets go on calling, and nothing else happens. Chapter 4. Closing the Agora. In Athens, in the years when the city is neither at war nor especially at peace, just going about its ordinary business, a shopkeeper is folding his awning for the night. He sells leather goods, sandals, belts, a few bags and pouches for carrying coins or dried herbs. His stall is at the edge of the Agora, the open market square at the center of the city, and by this hour of the evening, the square is nearly empty. The awning is a rectangle of heavy linen, dyed a faded reddish-brown, stretched on two wooden poles. He unties the cords that hold it taut, and the fabric sags and then folds downward like a slow, tired breath. He rolls it carefully, the way he has rolled it every evening for years, tucking the edges in so the fabric does not fray. He ties it with the same two cords and leans the bundle against the stone base of his stall. His unsold sandals go into a wooden box, which he locks with a simple pin and hasp. A few scraps of leather go into a bag. A small clay pot of tanning oil gets stoppered and set on the shelf beside the box. Each of these actions is so familiar that his hands perform them without any guidance from his thoughts. His thoughts are already at home, already imagining the oil lamp lit, the evening meal set out, the children settled. He walks home through quiet streets. The streets of Athens and the residential quarters are narrow, unpaved, and lined with the blank, windowless walls of houses that face inward toward their own small courtyards. At street level, there is almost nothing to see, just plastered walls, wooden doors, and the occasional glow of lamplight from a second-story window. The air smells of cooking, of olive oil heating in pans, of bread, and beneath that the ever-present faint scent of the city itself, dust and stone and donkey and dried herb. His house is modest, a few rooms arranged around a small courtyard open to the sky. The courtyard has no garden, just packed earth and a single clay pot with a struggling basil plant that his wife tends more out of habit than hope. When he enters, his wife has already lit the oil lamp. It sits in a niche in the wall, a small ceramic dish with a spout for the wick, burning olive oil. The light it casts is warm and unsteady, making the wall shift gently between shadow and pale gold. The evening meal is already laid out on a low table. It is simple, the kind of meal that most Athenians eat on most evenings. A bowl of olives, dark and slightly wrinkled, glistening with their own oil. A round loaf of barley bread, dense and chewy. A small dish of soft cheese, white and crumbly, made from goat's milk. There is water to drink, and a little wine mixed with water in a plain ceramic cup. It is not a feast. It is just dinner. His wife sits across from him. She is wearing a plain linen kitten, the simple draped garment that almost everyone wears, belted at the waist. Her hair is tied back with a strip of cloth. She looks tired, the way people look tired at the end of a long, ordinary day, not exhausted, just quietly ready for the day to be over. They eat slowly. The olives are good, salty, and firm. The bread is good, the way bread is always good when you are hungry, and the day is done. They talk a little. He mentions that a customer wanted a pair of sandals dyed a particular shade of red, and he was not sure he had the right pigment. She mentions that the woman next door has a new baby goat. Neither piece of information requires a response, and neither gets one. The conversation is like the meal itself, simple, nourishing, unremarkable. In the next room, the children are practicing their letters. The older boy has a wooden tablet coated with a thin layer of wax, and he is scratching letters into the surface with a pointed stylus. The wax curls up in tiny ribbons as he writes, and he can smooth it flat again with the blunt end of the stylus when he makes a mistake. The younger child watches, sometimes tracing the shapes in the air with a finger. The scratching of the stylus on wax is a small, intimate sound, like a fingernail drawn lightly across linen. Outside, the city has grown quiet. The agora is empty now, its stalls closed, its awnings folded. A stray cat crosses the square, its shadow long in the moonlight. The shopkeeper tears off another piece of bread and chews it slowly. The lamp flickers in the niche. The olives shine in their small bowl. The day has ended, and nothing of any consequence has happened, and that is perfectly fine. Chapter 5. Wool and Lamplight. Somewhere in the countryside outside a Greek city, in a farmhouse made of rough stone and timber, a woman sits near the lamp and spins wool. The room is small. The lamp is a simple clay dish with olive oil and a wick, set on a ledge near the wall, and its light reaches just far enough to illuminate her hands, the spindle, and the basket of carded wool at her feet. Beyond that circle of light, the room is soft and dim. The spindle is a slender stick of smooth wood with a small clay whorl at the bottom to give it weight. She holds a tuft of wool in her left hand and feeds it slowly, steadily onto the spindle, which she sets turning with a practiced twist of her right fingers. The spindle drops, turning, and the wool draws out into a thin, even thread as it falls. When the spindle reaches the ground, she winds the new thread around it and begins again. Drop, draw, wind. Drop, draw, wind. The rhythm is so steady and so old that it feels less like work and more like breathing, something the body simply does. The wool is from their own small flock, 4 sheep and a ram that graze on the hillside above the house. It was sheared in the spring, washed in the stream behind the house, and carded with wooden combs until it was soft and loose and free of burrs. It has a faint, not unpleasant smell, lanolin and grass, and something warm and animal. If you buried your face in the basket of carded wool, you would feel as though you were pressing into a cloud that had spent the day lying on a sunlit meadow. But she does not think about this. To her, it is simply wool, and she has been spinning it since she was a girl. Her husband sits across the room near the doorway, where the last blue light of evening still reaches. He is mending a sandal. The strap has frayed where it passes between the toes, and he is threading a strip of new leather through the old holes with a thick bronze needle. His fingers work slowly. The leather is stiff, and the needle does not want to pass through easily, so he pushes and waits, with the patience of a man who has mended many sandals and knows that the leather will give in its own time. They talk, but only in the way that people talk who have been married for a long time and no longer need to say very much to say enough. She mentions the neighbor's new goat. It got into the garden yesterday and ate the tops off the bean plants. He makes a sound that is halfway between agreement and disinterest. She asks whether the figs are ripe yet. He says probably another few days. She says she thought so too. The conversation does not go anywhere. It is not meant to go anywhere. It is the kind of conversation that exists only to fill the space between two people with a gentle sound, the way crickets fill the space between the trees. After a while it fades, and neither of them notices when it stops. The silence that follows is not uncomfortable. It is the silence of people who are content to simply be in the same room, doing small things with their hands, while the night settles in around them. The spindle turns. The thread draws out, thin and even. The needle pushes through the leather with a faint, soft pop. Outside, the hillside is dark, and the sheep have settled into their fold, their bodies pressed together for warmth. An owl calls once from somewhere in the olive grove, a low, round sound that carries across the still air and then dissolves. The lamp burns steadily, its flame no larger than a fingertip. She finishes the length of thread on the spindle and winds it into a small ball, which she adds to the others in a clay jar beside the basket. She does not start another length. It is late enough. She sets the spindle against the wall, where it leans at a slight angle, perfectly still. Her husband ties off the last stitch on the sandal strap, tests it with a gentle pull, and nods to himself. He sets the sandal by the door. The lamp flickers once and then steadies. The wool smells of lanolin and summer grass. The spindle rests against the wall. Outside, the crickets have taken over the night entirely, and their sound is as constant and as unremarkable as the sound of your own breathing. Chapter 6. The Roman Domus at Dusk. In Rome, in the early years of the empire, when the city is large and busy and full of noise during the day, the evenings bring a different quality. The noise drains away. The carts that are forbidden from the streets during daylight hours have not yet begun their nighttime rumbling. For a brief hour, the city is something close to quiet, and in the houses of the middle classes, families prepare for the evening meal that Romans call the cena. One such house, a domus, a private residence built around an open courtyard, sits on a side street in a modest neighborhood. It is not a grand house, but it is solid and well kept. The front door opens from the street into a short entrance hall, which leads to the atrium, the main room of the house, open to the sky in the center. In the floor of the atrium, directly beneath the opening in the roof, there is a shallow rectangular pool called the impluvium, designed to catch rainwater. Tonight there has been no rain, and the impluvium holds only a thin layer of still water from days ago, its surface perfectly flat, reflecting the last blue light of the sky like a square of polished metal. The household is in motion, but slowly, the way households move at the end of the day, without urgency or purpose beyond the next small task. Two household slaves carry dishes from the kalena, the kitchen at the back of the house, through the narrow corridor to the dining room. The dishes are plain terracotta, reddish-brown and unglazed. One carries a broad, shallow bowl of lentils cooked with onion and a little cumin. The other carries a basket of bread, round loaves with cracked golden crusts. Along the peristylium, the covered walkway that surrounds the small garden at the back of the house, oil lamps are being lit one by one. Each lamp is a small ceramic vessel shaped like a flattened teardrop, with a wick poking out from the spout. They burn olive oil, and when freshly lit, they give off a faint hiss and a thin curl of smoke before settling into a steady, quiet flame. The light they cast is warm and golden, pooling in small circles along the colonnade, leaving soft, deep shadows between them. The family gathers in the dining room, a modest room with 3 sloping couches arranged in a U-shape around a low central table. Romans of this class recline to eat, leaning on their left elbows, using their right hands to take food from the shared dishes. It is a posture that looks uncomfortable to describe, but becomes natural after a lifetime of practice. The paterfamilias, the father of the household, takes his place on the central couch. His wife reclines beside him. Their two children, still young, sit on stools at the edge of the table, their legs dangling. The meal is simple. The lentils are warm and soft, seasoned with a drizzle of olive oil and a pinch of ground cumin. The bread is good, sturdy, and slightly sour from the natural leaven. There is wine, but it is mixed with water, 2 parts water to 1 part wine, in a large ceramic jug. It is not a meal anyone would remember. It is simply the cena, the same meal, in its essentials, that is being eaten in 1,000 homes across the city at this same hour. They eat slowly. The children tear pieces of bread and dip them in the lentils. The father says something about the price of garum, the fermented fish sauce that Romans use the way other cultures use salt, and his wife nods without particular interest. One of the children asks a question about stars, or about horses, or about something equally far from the dinner table, and the father answers vaguely, and the question is forgotten. From the atrium, the sound of water dripping into the impluvium. A single drop from the roof edge falling into the still pool, making a sound so small it barely reaches the dining room. The oil lamps along the peristylium burn steadily. The garden beyond the columns is dark now, just the shapes of herbs and a single small fig tree, barely visible. The air smells of lentils and lamp oil, and the faint green scent of the garden after the heat of the day. The impluvium catches the last light. The bread cools on the table. The lamps glow in their small, steady circles. And the evening continues, the way evenings do, without anything happening that anyone would need to remember. Chapter 7. After the cena. The meal is over. The dishes sit on the low table, nearly empty. Just a smear of lentils on the rim of the bowl, a crust of bread, a few drops of watered wine in the bottom of a cup. One of the household slaves, a quiet woman with her hair tied back in a plain cloth, begins to clear the table. She moves without haste, stacking the bowls, gathering the bread into a basket, wiping the table with a damp linen cloth. The cloth makes a soft, circular sound against the wood, like a hand brushing slowly across fabric. The children have been taken to their room. They went without complaint, the way children go to bed when they are truly tired, their eyes already half closed, their feet shuffling along the mosaic floor. One of them mumbled something about a game, about continuing something tomorrow, and the other did not answer because she was already nearly asleep, held upright only by the gentle hand of the woman guiding her down the corridor. The paterfamilias has moved from the dining room to the atrium. He sits on a low wooden chair near the impluvium, the shallow pool in the floor that catches rain and sky. There is no sky to catch now, only darkness, and the water in the pool is black and still reflecting the small flame of a single oil lamp. He holds a letter in his hands. It is written on a thin sheet of papyrus, rolled and tied with a thread, and it arrived earlier today from a friend in a town to the south. The letter is about nothing in particular. His friend writes about the weather, about the olive harvest, about a wall on his property that needs repair. He asks whether anyone in Rome is still talking about the new aqueduct and mentions that his daughter has learned to read quite well. It is the kind of letter that one friend writes to another when there is no urgent news, when the purpose of writing is simply the act of staying in contact, of saying, "Here I am, the same as before." He reads it slowly, not because it is difficult to read, but because there is no reason to read it quickly. The words settle into his mind the way the lamplight settles into the corners of the room, gently, without effort. When he finishes, he rolls the papyrus again, ties the thread, and sets it on the small table beside his chair. He will write a reply tomorrow, or perhaps the day after. There is no hurry. His wife has gone to check on the children. She stands in the doorway of their room and listens to them breathe. The older child sleeps on her side, her knees drawn up, one hand tucked beneath her cheek. The younger child sleeps on his back, arms flung wide, mouth slightly open, perfectly abandoned to sleep in the way that only small children can manage. She watches them for a moment, not thinking anything in particular, just standing there in the doorway with one hand resting on the frame. Then she pulls the thin woolen blanket up over the younger one's shoulder and turns away. The house makes its small nighttime sounds. A door latch clicks softly in the kitchen as the slave closes the kalana for the night. A murmur of voices from the servants' quarters, too low to make out any words, just the gentle rise and fall of people talking before sleep. Water drips into the impluvium, a single drop at long, irregular intervals, each one making a small, clear sound that seems louder in the quiet than it would have seemed during the day. The paterfamilias sits for a while longer. The lamp burns down. The flame shrinks until it is barely there, a tiny point of orange light hovering above the surface of the oil. He does not refill it. He will go to bed soon. The letter rests on the table. The children sleep. Water drips into the dark pool, and each drop makes its small, round sound, and the house settles around him like a blanket settling over a bed. Chapter 8. The Farmer's Gate. In China, in the time of the Han Dynasty, in the flat farmland along the Wei River, a farmer closes his gate for the night. The gate is nothing grand. It is 2 panels of rough wood, weathered gray by rain and sun, set into posts of the same wood, and it closes the gap in a low wall of packed earth that surrounds his small homestead. The wall is barely chest high. It would not stop anyone who truly wanted to enter. But it marks the boundary between the fields and the home, between the day's work and the evening's rest, and closing the gate is the act that separates one from the other. He pulls the 2 panels together and drops a wooden bar across them to hold them shut. The bar slots into notches carved into the posts, and it falls into place with a sound like a knuckle tapping on a table. He stands for a moment, his hand resting on the rough wood, and looks out through the gap above the gate at the fields. The millet is tall, almost ready for harvest, its seed heads heavy and drooping. In the fading light, the field looks like a flat, dark sea, and the millet heads sway gently in a breeze so slight he can barely feel it on his face. He turns back toward the house. The homestead is small, a main house of rammed earth with a thatched roof, a smaller shed for tools and grain storage, and a low enclosure for the chickens. The chickens are already roosting, settled on their perches inside the enclosure, making the soft, clucking murmurs they make at dusk, a drowsy, contented sound, like water bubbling very slowly. He takes a clay scoop from a peg on the wall and fills it with millet from a bin near the shed door. He scatters the grain into the enclosure, more out of habit than need, because the chickens are already settled and barely stir. A few grains bounce off the packed earth with a sound like tiny pebbles on a drum. The air is cooling. The thatched roof of the house creaks faintly as the straw contracts, a sound so familiar he does not hear it, the way you do not hear the sound of your own house at night. The sky in the west is the color of plum skin, dark and soft, and the first stars have appeared above the eastern fields, faint and unhurried. Inside the house, his wife is boiling water for the evening meal. The fire pit is a shallow stone-lined depression in the center of the main room, and a clay pot sits on an iron stand above a small arrangement of burning sticks and dried millet stalks. The water is just beginning to move, not yet boiling, just the first slow, lazy bubbles rising from the bottom and breaking at the surface with a sound so gentle it is almost imaginary. She will add millet to make a thin congee and perhaps a few dried vegetables, turnip greens or cabbage, softened in the broth. It is not a complicated meal. It does not need to be. Their son sits near the wall on a low wooden platform that serves as both bench and bed. He is perhaps 9 or 10, with bare feet and a cotton tunic that is slightly too large for him. In his lap he holds a bundle of bamboo slips, narrow strips of bamboo about the length of a chopstick, tied together with cord at one end. These are his school texts. He is arranging them for tomorrow's lesson, sorting the slips into the correct order, checking that the characters written on each one are legible, and that the cord binding has not come loose. His fingers move through the slips with a soft clicking sound, like someone shuffling very thin tiles. The farmer comes in and sits near the fire. He removes his sandals, which are woven from straw, and sets them near the door. His bare feet rest on the earthen floor, which is cool and smooth. He watches his wife stir the pot. He watches his son sort the bamboo slips. He does not say anything. The fire crackles softly. The water begins to boil, a low, steady murmur. The thatched roof creaks once more, and then settles. Outside, the gate is closed. The millet stands dark and still in the fields. The chickens are quiet on their perches. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, and the sound carries across the flat land and fades into nothing. The walls hold their warmth. The congee thickens slowly in the pot. Nothing else needs to happen. Chapter 9. The Scholar's Desk. In a provincial town in Han, China, some distance from the capital, a low-ranking government clerk sits at his desk and trims his lamp wick. The lamp is a small bronze dish on a stem, filled with sesame oil, and the wick is a twist of hemp fiber that has burned down during the evening until only a short blackened nub remains above the oil. He pinches off the charred end between his thumb and forefinger, the way one pinches off a spent candle, and the flame brightens slightly, the pool of light on his desk growing by a few inches. It is not much, but it is enough to see by when his desk is a low wooden table, plain and well-worn, with a smooth surface that shows the grain of the wood in long, pale lines. On it are arranged the tools of his work in his study: an inkstone, a small stick of ink, a water dropper shaped like a gourd, a bamboo brush, and a bundle of blank bamboo slips. He picks up the inkstick and dips the end into the small puddle of water on the inkstone. Then he grinds, pressing the stick against the flat stone surface and moving it in slow, tight circles. The ink thickens gradually, turning from pale gray water to a rich, deep black, the color of a starless sky. The grinding makes a soft, rhythmic sound, like a stone being rubbed gently against another stone, like the sound the world might make if it were slowly, slowly turning. He is copying a passage from the Analects, the collected sayings of Confucius. Not because he has been told to. Not because anyone will check his work. He copies it because this is what he does in the evenings after his official duties are done. He copies and he studies and he tries, slowly, to commit the passages to memory, character by character, the way a person learns a long road, by walking it many times. He picks up the brush, a slender bamboo handle with a tip of rabbit hair, and dips it into the ink. He lifts a blank bamboo slip from the bundle and holds it steady with his left hand. The slip is about as long as his forearm and as wide as two fingers held together. Its surface is smooth, lightly oiled, the color of pale straw. He begins to write. Each character is made of several strokes, laid down in a specific order: horizontal before vertical, left falling before right falling, outside before inside. He writes slowly, not because he is uncertain, but because the writing itself is a kind of meditation, a way of letting the words enter through the hand as well as the mind. The brush touches the bamboo with a whisper, the faintest sound of soft hair on smooth wood. Each stroke leaves a line of wet ink that gleams for a moment in the lamplight and then begins to dry. The black deepening, the gleam fading to a matte finish. The passage he is copying tonight concerns the proper conduct of daily life. It is not dramatic. It says, in essence, that a person should attend to what is in front of them, do their work carefully, treat others with respect, and not worry overmuch about things they cannot control. It is the kind of advice that could have been given in any civilization, in any age, and it strikes him, as it always does, as both perfectly obvious and strangely difficult to follow. He writes it down anyway. He will write it down again tomorrow. When the slip is full, he sets it aside and waits for the ink to dry. This takes only a moment. The air in the room is dry and still, and the ink sinks into the grain of the bamboo quickly, becoming part of the surface. He rolls the slip carefully and ties it with a short length of cord, adding it to a growing bundle of slips on the shelf above his desk. The bundle has gotten thick over the weeks. He is making his own copy of the Analects, one slip at a time, and he is perhaps halfway through. There is no rush. He sets down his brush and leans back slightly from the desk. The ink on the stone is drying. The lamp flame trembles once, as though touched by a breath he did not feel, and then steadies. Outside, the town has gone quiet. No voices. No cartwheels. Just the faint sound of wind in the tiles on the roof, and beyond that, nothing. The ink dries on the stone. The brush rests in its holder. The bamboo slips lie bundled on the shelf. And the scholar sits for a while longer in the small circle of lamplight, not reading, not writing, just sitting, the way a person sits at the end of the day, when the work is done and the mind has grown quiet, and there is nothing left to do but let the night come in. Chapter 10. All the lamps go out. Now the evening is very late, and across the ancient world, in places separated by thousands of miles, and sometimes by thousands of years, the ordinary people we have visited are closing their eyes. In the small house near the Nile, the Egyptian scribe's lamp has burned through the last of its oil. The flame shrinks to a blue point, flickers twice, and goes out. A thin thread of smoke rises from the wick and dissolves in the dark air. The room fills with a comfortable darkness, the kind that does not frighten, but embraces. The papyrus rests in its basket, the ink long dry. The reed pen lies cleaned beside the pallet. The bread is eaten, the beer is drunk, and the scribe lies down on his mat beside his wife, and the walls of the house hold the last of the day's warmth around them like cupped hands. In the Mesopotamian town, the merchant's hearth has cooled entirely. The embers that were glowing orange an hour ago have turned to soft white ash. The pot of barley stew sits on the ledge, the remnants cooling and thickening in the night air. His children have not stirred. They sleep in the same curled positions on their reed mats, undisturbed, their breathing so quiet it is almost silence. The merchant and his wife lie down near the hearth, close to each other. The clay seal on the storehouse door holds firm, untouched. The sesame oil in its sealed jars is pale and still, and will be there in the morning. In the Levantine potter's courtyard, the kiln has given up its last warmth. If you touched its walls now, they would be cool, no different from the courtyard wall or the gatepost. The bowls inside are dark and still, waiting for no one. The broom leans against the wall where the apprentice left it. The crickets have reached their full chorus, a silver curtain of sound that hangs in the air over the town. The potter sleeps in his house behind the courtyard, the smell of clay still on his hands. In Athens, the shopkeeper's house is dark. The oil lamp in the wall niche has been snuffed, pinched out between a thumb and finger. The olives and cheese have been put away. The children's wax tablet sits on a ledge, the letters they practiced still pressed into the surface, waiting to be smoothed flat in the morning. The awning is folded in the empty agora. The stray cat has found its corner. The moon is high over the Acropolis, and the city sleeps the way cities sleep, in layers, not all at once, but household by household, lamp by lamp. In the Greek countryside, the spindle rests against the wall. The ball of wool is in its jar. The mended sandal sits by the door, its new strap stiff and ready for tomorrow's use. The sheep on the hillside are motionless in their fold. The owl has stopped calling. The woman and her husband sleep in the small room behind the hearth, and the only sound is the crickets, steady and endless, filling the night the way the dark fills a room when the lamp goes out. In Rome, the last lamp in the domus gutters and dies. The atrium is dark. The impluvium catches no light now, just the faintest suggestion of sky, a rectangle of deeper darkness in the dark floor. The letter from the friend in the south rests on the table. The children sleep with their blankets pulled close. Water drips into the pool. One drop, then a long silence. Then another drop. The house breathes. In the farmhouse along the Way River, the gate is closed. The millet stands in the dark fields. The chickens are silent on their perches. The sun's bamboo slips are arranged neatly for tomorrow. The fire pit holds only ash. The family sleeps beneath the thatched roof that creaks once, softly, in the cooling air, and then is still. In the provincial town, the Han scholar has set down his brush. The ink has dried on the stone. The lamp flame has sunk to a dim ember. He watches it for a moment, this last small light, and then he leans forward and breathes on it gently, and it goes out. The dark is sudden and complete, but it is not empty. It is full of the quiet that comes after work, after food, after the day has been used up, and there is nothing left but rest. Across centuries and continents, ordinary people close their eyes. The ink dries. The embers cool. The spindles rest. The gates are closed. The bread is eaten. Nothing more needs to happen tonight. And now the ancient world sleeps. The Nile moves slowly in the darkness, the way it has always moved, wide and quiet and unhurried. Starlight touches its surface and breaks into 1,000 small, trembling points of silver. Along its banks, the mud brick houses are dark, their walls still faintly warm. The Euphrates winds between its low banks, and the towns along its canals are quiet. The sesame oil is sealed in its jars. The barley stew has cooled. The clay seals hold fast. The stars above the flat, wide land are the same stars that shine above the Nile. The Aegean Sea turns beneath the moonlight, dark and slow. The islands sleep. The olive groves are still. Somewhere, a fishing boat is tied to a stone pier, rocking gently, its hull tapping against the rock with a sound so soft it could be mistaken for silence. The same stars. The Tiber passes through Rome, and the city is as quiet as it ever gets. The forums are empty. The fountains trickle. The cats own the streets. And above it all, the same stars, the same ancient, patient, indifferent light. The Way River shines under the same sky. The millet fields stretch to the horizon, dark and vast and perfectly still. The thatched roofs are silver in the starlight. A dog sleeps in a doorway. A chicken shifts on its perch and settles again. All the same, sky. All the same, quiet. All the same slow, easy darkness that has been falling over the world every evening since the beginning. You are here, in that darkness now. The walls around you hold their warmth. The air is still. The work of the day is done, the bread is eaten, the fire has gone to ash, and there is nothing left to do, nowhere to go, nothing to remember. Just the quiet. Just the dark. Just the slow, ordinary miracle of falling asleep. The same way people have always fallen asleep, in every age, in every land, under the same turning sky. Good night. Sleep well. Nothing more needs to happen tonight.